Good morning, everyone. We don't have any slides. We're just going to talk to you, and it's a great pleasure to be talking to you again after last year, which those who are there will agree. I know it was a really terrific meeting last time, and so I told everyone about it at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, and this time I'm here with my colleague Liz. Our emphasis is going to be on entrepreneurship. We've heard that word a few times this morning, what it is and how it might be placed as a career-focused conservatoire curricular offering. Easy for me to say, not. So building on the growing research in this area, much of it from the very distinguished researchers right here, we're going to speak this morning from our personal and professional experience. I got to know Liz through doing some sessions for her on her musician as entrepreneur module. So I'm going to pass over to Liz to say hello.
Yes, indeed. And this was about just over 3 years ago, I think. I joined the RCS to head up the subject areas that look at professional skills in music for all the music students that we have here. And that was further to 7 years at what is now Leeds Conservatoire, where I was working on the music business degree and also running various contextual studies, cultural studies and entrepreneurship and professional studies subjects there as well. So I've taught literally thousands of musicians over the past 10 years, originally working with music producers, pop and rock musicians, and then quite interestingly, since I came up here to Scotland, working more with classical, Scottish traditional and jazz musicians. And I think Celia is going to tell you a bit more about our perhaps rather potty curriculum that we have up here in some respects, because there are so many options for students when they get here.
So in our curriculum, we have tons of options, but professional skills is not optional. And that quote that we started with in the abstract about from the first years, why are we wasting our time on this stuff, really made us mad. So we're going to talk about two myths this morning. And here's myth number one, which is still held by some students. And that's the myth of the employer as savior. Someone's going to employ me. Someone's going to pay me. I don't think so. And Liz and I have seen again and again students getting to a final year and suddenly dawning on them that they're going to have to be out there. Some undergraduates have a resistance to wanting to study professional skills and to thinking about how musicians earn money. And we found that classical music students have a particularly bad case of this. Perhaps they're often from a more financially secure background, and often, mostly, they've been looked after in loco parentis by their teacher, their specialist music school, the institution, perhaps the orchestra. Now we wondered, aren't we really past this stage, as this conference very well demonstrates, past this stage of being looked after? Well, as I'm going to present some evidence that we're still stuck in this mindset. I came across a recent article in the Strad, the String Players magazine, because Google thought I would like it. And it was called The Musician's 10 Commandments by cellist David Finkel, an eminent artist and teacher. He was the cellist, he is cellist in the Emerson Quartet. And his 10 commandments for musicians were starting off, know thyself, be an artist, keep learning, visualize possible lives. And I was really getting to like this. I think this all sounds good. But commandment number 7 was, ask not what the industry can do for you, but what you can do for the industry. The best a musician can do for them, who's them, is bring them solutions, not problems. They appreciate all your ideas about programming, creative ways to appeal to the public, blah, blah, blah. And that's where I stopped. So positing musicians as separate to the industry, I found really gobsmacking and a big disconnect and evidence of the employer as savior. And incidentally, the following article was how teachers can help students deal with feelings of futility and despair. I rest my case. So how do we support students to get out of this dependency mindset? Well, possibly by entrepreneurship. And another myth to bust, and this is as much for us as curricular designers as for students, is about the nature of entrepreneurship. So the myth is that entrepreneurship is all about business and making money and being one of those unpleasant characters in The Apprentice, but very little to do with being an artist. Over to Liz.
Yes, and I guess I've been thinking entrepreneurially since before I started in music, as a self-employed daughter, as self-employed parent. And so for me, entrepreneurship, and anyone else in business, I think, knows that if you just set out to make money, you will make none. So just focusing on money making as entrepreneurship, I think, is a big myth. As renowned business guru and author Simon Sinek says in his Golden Circle TED Talk, money is a result of being in business, but it's not always it's always a result, sorry. If you're in business, then there should be money coming in, or you wouldn't be in business. But the performer, like the community musician, the music educator, and the entrepreneur, impact is the true purpose of all of these types of individuals, I believe. And the entrepreneurial mindset has been studied and defined in diverse different ways. And in 2020, researchers, as you may be aware, from the Kelley School of Business in Indiana, examined the existing literature very well on the subject. And in their article, Unraveling the Entrepreneurial Mindset, the researchers found 3 distinct aspects of the entrepreneurial mindset had risen up through the research over the years. And they codified these 3 aspects of the entrepreneurial mindset as the cognitive aspect, so how entrepreneurs think is different to other individuals. And they looked at how entrepreneurs use mental models to think about what they're thinking about a lot of the time. And then we have the behavioral aspect, how entrepreneurs engage or act or behave in the world to create and make the most of opportunities. And the entrepreneurial emotional aspect, what entrepreneurs feel in entrepreneurship. And this is actually what I've been telling my students a little bit less articulately for years. The entrepreneurs work from the inside out. We align our values with what we do in the outside world, and then we act in a way that we think will impact the outside world, and we figure out how to act by looking at the outside world. So it's this 3-part mindset. So cultural entrepreneurs, like cultural theorists, study culture and consider what might happen next. This is the cognitive aspect, we might say. They think strategically, envisioning a desirable future and then acting to make such a future a reality. They coordinate their behavior with their thoughts, and then also with the needs and interests in others, and also with their own inner values and their own artistic values to steer decision making and to enable quick decision making that is then actually effective. So entrepreneurship is not so much about money making, although that might be a very useful side effect of entrepreneurship. It is rather about understanding yourself and your own identity and how you might impact the world, the culture, and the people around you accordingly. Entrepreneurs are not people who think up great ideas in isolation and then take those ideas out and bless the world with them. They are people who innovate and adapt things to better suit and delight other people, like water, adapting rapidly and reflexively to rapidly changing environments, like the protean career practitioner. Entrepreneurs adapt their leadership approach intuitively to the context they are in, like chameleons adapt to their environment. They use structured thought exercises, such as business model canvas exercises, for example, to evaluate risks and grow opportunities and to cognitively analyze the world around them. Indeed, entrepreneurship is about applied critical thinking. It's not separate from your identity as an artist. And so conservatoires, or at least the ones that I've worked for, and HE institutions around the world, we provide personal reflective space to students, an entrepreneurial education that helps them gain clarity as to how their personal artistic characteristics, values, and aspirations relate to wider culture. And thus, according to my cohorts, at least, reducing the anxiety that students feel about their futures. And this being the case, seeing entrepreneurship as a values-based, anxiety-reducing subject, the question then becomes not if, but when we should include this subject in the overall learning journey, whatever our context that we're working in. So, Celia, I think you have some evidence as it supports whether we should do this during the curriculum, after things are finished and they're graduates, and if it's in the curriculum, where should it be? Should it be optional? Should it be core? What's the survey say?
Well, the survey said, and this was a survey that I did this year of students across our discipline areas, which is music and a lot of other performing arts subjects as well, who had elected to do some entrepreneurial top-ups rather than this being in the curriculum. And this cohort were really clear about, once they were in work, about the challenges of freelance work and the lack of preparation for it as undergraduates. And they were clear about timeliness of entrepreneurial programs being most useful for them immediately post-graduation. So as that, putting it there just post-graduation. They also talked, Liz mentioned there about how these programs reduced some anxiety and boosted their confidence. And this led to Liz and I discussing this. And I said, well, this is what they all said. They wanted their entrepreneurship post-graduation. And if the students really don't value it during their undergraduate work, why are we bothering to put it in their undergraduate work? Back to Liz.
When I said, I was incensed, because these subjects need to sit within the curriculum and also need to be addressed further to graduation, in my opinion. I would suggest that teaching entrepreneurship and supporting students in applying their entrepreneurship further to graduation would help us build healthier practitioners and a healthier field of practice. And if we encourage a values-based approach to entrepreneurial or perhaps any type of thinking, this will make for a happier mind for everybody involved. And we do, of course, have a duty of care as educators to equip students to cope with the large amounts of misinformation and malpractice that exist in the digital music economies in particular, where I feel things are perhaps more unequal than they were back in the days of physical product and HMV, harking back to our keynote speech earlier on, I think there. So it's perhaps critical for students to have this in the curriculum so they can orientate their development and align themselves with their future expectations, align themselves and their future expectations with wider practice and culture. But it's also vitally important for graduates too, as of course it's only at this point where some students will actually encounter all three parts of the entrepreneurial mindset, where they're not only thinking about entrepreneurship, but they are doing it because they need to pay the rent, and they are also then feeling what it's like and going through those kind of emotional aspects of entrepreneurship too. So to sum up, I think they need it at all stages, but certainly for me, I like to top and tail the curriculum so they have all these myths busted when they join us. And then I think the research that Celia is doing hopefully will lead us to even more support towards those final parts of the learning journey, we might say, into lifelong learning journeys.